Hi, this is Ela, and we are on the 5th video for the Beginning Watercolor series. And what we're going to do today is we are going to mix all three primaries together. So we're building up on what we did last time where we mixed two primaries to get the secondaries. But now we're going to go whole hog and do all three. And you know, back when you were a kid, you would accidentally mix all three together and you would end up with mud or brown and you would be disappointed. But what I find with watercolor is that the transparency, it's just beautiful. You just get these beautiful subtle colors. And actually, Daniel Smith has a whole line of subtle neutrals that they sell in tube form for lots of money. And yes, if you really love them, go ahead and purchase them. But it's also really important to find out exactly how many colors can you get out of your palette. As I mentioned before, you know, it's nice to have lots of colors, to have a big palette like this one, and I've even added a few. But, you know, you can also do a lot with just a tiny little selection. So this is a bright pure yellow that will make a great green or orange. This is a quinacridone red that will make a nice orange and a purple. And then I have my ultramarine blue and I have my phthalo blue. And, you know, this isn't what I use all the time. It's more fun to have more colors. But I was able to make this painting with this palette. Oops. You can do some very interesting pictures. You can have a full range of colors, including neutrals, including all your secondaries, with just a little tiny palette. So we're just going to start exploring what are those colors that are hiding. You know, we're not even going to use two blues. We're only going to use one. So this is an example of one that I did previously. This is also an example of what happens if you mix too much water in with your paint. And it's not ugly, it's not bad, it's just not necessarily an effect that you want. So what you'll notice is you get this really dark outline around the edge. And each of these are much paler than what they looked like when they were wet. And we're also getting a lot of what are called backgrounds. And you can see in the middle how you get these sort of cauliflower shapes. And it's kind of cool looking, but if you don't want it, it can be very frustrating. Another interesting thing that we're happening here is I mentioned briefly granulation. I've got a whole series of videos where I talk more about what is granulation. But basically, certain pigments are heavier than others, and they tend to have kind of a gritty quality. And so you can see ultramarine blue is a very heavy color, and it's sort of settling down here in this wet part that took longer to dry. And we see it over here. Cerulean blue is also a heavy pigment, and it kind of settles into areas and separates a little bit. But it's kind of cool looking, but it may not be what you necessarily want. So, okay, we're going to start this process, and we're going to use the same colors as we used in our last video. So we're going to use that bright yellow, cadmium yellow. We're going to use phthalo blue, and we're going to use alizarin crimson. And we're going to see how many colors can we get out of that selection. And we're going to be much more free and fast and loose than with the last exercise. Another thing I'm going to mention is you can squeeze more paint into your palette. So I've really been using this palette a lot lately. I did a big blob of all three of those colors, and I let them dry overnight. Sometimes it takes a little longer to dry, but you can mix tubes. I'll let you watch what I'm doing here. You can mix tubes and pans together. So I'm just going to grab some red here. It's pretty wet and juicy. This is alizarin crimson. And I want to have all three colors just so I don't contaminate my palette. I'm going to use different brushes, but I'm going to be a lot more wild and free with the application. So we've got two colors now. You might add some more over here as well. And I'm going to add some phthalo blue. The blue that ate New York. I probably don't need very much of that little blue. Of the three, I want the most yellow, but I'm going to keep leaning into different directions. I'm going to start in kind of a more bluish direction. And I could grab just a little bit of that red. Let's see what happens with this combination. So mostly blue, a little bit of red. I've got a very nice dark neutral teal. I can add, I just keep adding yellow. Let's see what kinds of greens we can get out of this. I can also add more water. I just put some water on my brush. What happens if I make it lighter? I just keep leaning into the yellows. I could go into the yellows forever if I wanted to. Make sure I'm in, sorry about that. Get too focused down there. You can see it's a green, but there's a little bit of red in there. Let's keep playing into that red. Getting some browns. So it's interesting because you can, while it's getting very neutral, you can actually see the little dots of red and green and blue in there. So I'll try and do this so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to lean into the reds for a little while. Let's see what happens if I lean into the reds. What kind of colors do I get? What was this? Yeah, there we go. Maybe I'll just mix this around and see. We don't really even have a clear goal. We're just, besides just how many colors can we get? How many? What if I take my reddish brush and just start mixing it around here? And eventually we probably will get a black. In fact, I can make that an effort. We're getting kind of repetitive. Let's go heavier in the blue. There we go. We're getting closer to black right now. Still a little bit more purplish. If I really wanted to get black, because this is purplish, what I want to do is I want to choose the color on the other side of the color wheel. Let me pull out a color wheel real quick. So whatever color you want to get, right, you just have to think the arrangement of all the colors in the color wheel. So if it's too purplish, right, here's this is supposed to be my pure purple. The opposite is yellow. So if this is too purplish, if I want this to be more black, I need to add yellow to it. If it was too green, then I would want to add more red. If it was too blue, I'd want to add more orange, or the opposite. If it's too brownish, because you know all these colors are mixed in with it, brown is basically just orange with some blue added to it, so it means there's not enough blue. And black contains a lot of blue. Black is mostly blue. So I have some yellow on this brush. I'm just gonna touch that on there. Go back to that brush I was using before. So I added just a little bit of yellow by touching the brush on it, and I'm going back to the original brush that I used to apply. Let's see, do we have a black? It's very close. Still maybe a tiny bit on the purple side, but I kind of like it. But these are the type of colors. We're getting close to the type of colors that you get from Daniel Smith. There might be a little bit too much red in there as well. And if you had a shadow, if you had some black in a painting, you know, in a composition that you wanted to paint, maybe this is close enough. Maybe that's a color that's more interesting to you. Another thing to keep in mind is that all these colors look good together because they all contain the same red, the same yellow, the same blue. Even though some of these look really different, there's there's a unifying quality by going into the same colors and over again. I'm going to show you what a more pure, it's not a true black, but it's very close. This is a color called Payne's Gray. It is a color that you buy, obviously, you know, in a set or in a tube, and it's what many painters use instead of a true black. It's very close to a black, but just to give you some comparison, you can see these are still kind of purplish compared to this. And it's called Payne's Gray because a artist named Payne's decided to mix, I think it was a blue and a brown together, and this was the color that he got, and people really liked it. And it's now, I guess you would call it a convenience color. Any color that you could mix, but you really like it and you want to use it a lot and you don't want to have to go through the struggle of mixing it over and over again, it's fine to buy a tube of that or to have it, you know, come in a palette. And then, you know, as you can see, it is some work trying to get something that looks, you know, to try even close to that. I'm going to add a little bit more. Let's see if I can get closer. Oh, I went too far. Oh, well. Let's see if we can get some more. I'll see what that looks like. We're back to the blues again. Straight up blue. I'm going to check out some browns. Let's see if I can get some good browns, which I will need a lot of yellow to get a good brown. Let's put a bunch of yellow over here. Get some oranges and some rusty colors. Got some greens. Got some things close to red. This brush is too small. I'm going to use the bigger brush. Take a little bit of this, put it over here. A little bit more red. Let's see if I can get something close to a burnt sienna, which is a brown people like a lot. It's a little too bluish. Getting closer. So yeah, just kind of, how do you mix a color? How do you mix a particular color that you want? Learning how to sort of drive the direction. You know, don't just be blindly throwing stuff in and freaking out. And if any of these colors, if you want to mix them again, you know the recipe. It's just this red, this yellow, this blue, nothing else. If you sit down and just mess with it and practice, you can make it again. It's not, you know, it's not hiding anywhere. It's there. You just have to find it. Yeah, we're beginning to repeat ourselves a little bit here. But there are literally hundreds of colors just hiding in there. You just have to learn how to choose your direction. Is it too red? Is it too yellow? Is it too blue? What do you need? All right, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, well, right now we're mixing directly in our palette. The next video, we're going to mix colors, but we're going to be doing it on our paper, so that's another fun thing to do. All right, see you next time.